What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Ben Valley, and back with another episode of the Sports Pod. Today, I have a special guest with me. He has done play-by-play for Big East basketball games. He hosts the Big East shoot-around in the Field of 68 on FS1. I'm very lucky to have John Fanta on the show today. How you doing?
Ben, it's great to be with you. Thank you so much for having me on your show. Love the show, and it is awesome to be talking a wide variety of sports with you. You cover a lot, and thanks so much for having me on. Thrilled to be here.
Just a little background for you, Mr. Fanta. I started this podcast last fall after attending the sports broadcasting camp at Montclair State. Since then, I talked a lot of Knicks hoops in the winter and have transitioned to Mets baseball in the spring and the summer. I'm excited to announce this is my 40th episode. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk with me. I really appreciate it.
Well, number 40, congratulations on 40 episodes. Here's to the next 40 more, the next 400 more. I know you've got it in you to be great. And like we talked about at the camp, you're a rising star, which is the absolute truth. So keep it up. And I'm happy to join you as a guest anytime you need me. It's great to be with you.
You're welcome back anytime you want. So since it is mid-July, there are a couple different directions we can go. Shohei Ohtani, the Mets, the Jets. But since I do have Mr. Big East here, let's start with some Big East hoops and more specifically St. John's and Rick Pitino.
It's an amazing storyline, right, Ben? I mean,
Yeah, it's crazy.
He's been able to do.
So St. John's went out this offseason and made a big splash hiring Rick Pitino. In his first season at new schools, he's 81-60. How much success can you see him having in his first season leading the Red Storm?
A lot of success. And look, he had his work carved out for him right when he took the job at St. John's because this roster from last year's team was depleted. You had kids transferring out. And Rick Pitino said it. Not every kid can play for me. I'm a certain type of coach. I want a certain type of player. What he's been able to do, Ben, in bringing in reigning Ivy League Player of the Year, Jordan Dingle from Penn, a guy who averaged over 20 points per game last year, in bringing in a kid from UMass, RJ Louise, who's a double-figure scorer on the perimeter, in bringing in Glenn Taylor from Oregon State, bringing in Dennis Jenkins, Quinn Slazinski, a couple of kids from Iona. The way that they've been able to build this roster up is with perimeter players who are shot makers and who will help that backcourt be versatile and be able to have different scoring threats. Rick Pitino knew that he'd have his starting center back. And when his introductory press conference happened on March 22nd at Madison Square Garden, he said, Joel Soriano, you're my guy. You're my captain. That vote of confidence was big. It established a relationship between Pitino and his starting center. Pitino didn't just wrap up at the end of May. He made a huge ad in June. How good is Pitino, Ben? Immediately, he brings in the highest rated freshman for St. John's basketball in a decade, in 10 years, with the commitment of Simeon Wilcher, who was committed to North Carolina, asks out of his national letter of intent, and instead is coming up to Queens to play close to home. And I don't think Pitino's done, Ben. There's a lot of rumors stating that he could pick up Chris Ledlum, a transfer from Tennessee, who was at Harvard last year, hasn't liked Tennessee, and is trying to move on. The point, he could be very, very good this upcoming year. St. John's has not won an NCAA tournament game since 2000. The pieces to the puzzle are in place for that drought to end in year one of the Pitino era in New York City.
So you mentioned they haven't won a tournament game in a while. How long do you think it'll take before they get that first win?
A year, maybe two. They could get it this year. They could get that first tournament win this year with a player as good as Dingle, with a big man in Soriano. If they can get Chris Ledlum from Tennessee, to be able to hold down the power forward slot. They brought in Naheem Aline. I forgot to bring up Naheem Aline from UConn. Aline was a sharpshooter for the defending national champion Huskies this past year, and now he's a member of the St. John's Red Storm. They've got pieces that can flourish together, and they've got a Hall of Fame coach on the sidelines. I think that the NCAA tournament drought for St. John's basketball could be snapped come next March. I really do believe that. If it takes more than 2 years, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, I watched them. I went to the opening night triple header of the Big East tournament this past season, and they looked like they were just a couple pieces away from really getting over that hump and getting into some of the bigger games, maybe Sweet 16 or Elite Eight. They were right there. They just needed a couple more pieces.
Totally agree.
So with the big NIL money being handed out nowadays, and players favoring traditional blue blood schools like Duke or Kentucky or North Carolina or Kansas, how is St. John's going to be able to compete to recruit the top tier players?
Well, it's a great question. And I think every school's asking themselves that right now. I think Seton Hall's asking themselves that right now. I think Villanova, I think Georgetown, I think Providence, all those schools up and down the Northeast corridor that don't have football or don't have power conference FBS football. I think the key is you got to be able to engage with your donor base. St. John's has a big money guy in Mike Rapoli. Mike Rapoli founded Vitamin Water. And is a guy that has a lot of dollars in New York. I mean, he's a known horse owner, a guy who has his Rapoli Farms. He owns horses. He has had participants in the Kentucky Derby. He's had participants in all the major horse races. The point, he's a St. John's alum who possesses dollars. So St. John's, they're going to be fine. St. John's isn't worried at all about NIL. You know why? They've got Rick Pitino, and he's an elite fundraiser. He's an elite people person. He brings people together. He is going to be able to get St. John's money in. St. John's will have a New York identity. That's going to help guide players too. They've previously been playing 3 or 4 times a year at the Garden, at Madison Square Garden. Then that is going to change this upcoming year. They're going to play 8 games, maybe 9 at Madison Square Garden. So my point is, I think you're already seeing the changes. I don't think St. John's should be worried. I do think there should be other schools that are concerned about this, but I think St. John's is going to be able to maybe not compete with Duke exactly, but they're going to be in that upper echelon of teams. I mean, look, they got Simeon Wilcher. He was a North Carolina commit, and St. John's just took Wilcher from them. North Carolina's a team that is considered a blue blood. Right there at the top of college basketball. St. John's is going to be just fine. They're going to be able to get the premier talent.
Yeah, totally. They're getting this big commit out of North Carolina, getting him to decommit Wilcher. I think that'll be a big piece for them. And that'll be a leverage piece going forward, because you're seeing now that they're getting players from the blue blood schools, and that hopefully they'll be able to continue that and continue to recruit the top tier of talent. So with the national champions coming out of the Big East last season in UConn, can we expect to see another national champion in the next year or two?
Out of the Big East?
Yeah.
Well, look, it's always on the table. Marquette's going to be a top 5 worthy team this upcoming year. My top teams in the country: number 1, Kansas; number 2, Duke; number 3, Michigan State. Marquette's there at 4, Purdue's at 5. In the Big East, Marquette's a contender. Creighton's a contender with Baylor Shireman, Trey Alexander, and Ryan Kalkbrenner all back for the Blue Jays. So I look at Creighton as being a team that could be on that radar. I go beyond those two. UConn will be very, very strong. Ben, they did lose their best 3 players from the national championship team in Adama Sanogo, Jordan Hawkins, and Andre Jackson. That's it. Those are 3 huge losses. Now, Connecticut has a top-tier recruiting class coming in. Stephen Castle should be awesome. Solo Ball as well should be a guy that comes in and plays at a high level. But it's hard to be able to turn things over and repeat. It's hard to do that. You know, in terms of possibilities, Villanova is a team that you should look out for this year. They could be a Big East title contender if all goes well. Are they national championship good? I'm not sure about that, but what I do know is they've got Justin Moore and Eric Dixon. And Justin Moore is really, really good, and I wouldn't want to go up against him in March. I don't think they're national championship worthy. I think they're a team that could make the Sweet 16 this upcoming year. I'm bullish on Villanova. But the lead contenders for a national title this upcoming year out of the Big East would be Marquette and Creighton. Look out for Tyler Kolek, Cam Jones, Oso Ighodaro, and Shaka Smart's coaching with that Golden Eagles program has been pretty spectacular.
Yeah, Marquette, I believe they were eliminated by Michigan State last year. Tyler Copeland went down early in that game. He eventually returned, but losing him, they, for however much time it was, put them down, and they were in a deficit. So it seems like you have two or three teams that you expect to come out of the Big East: Nova, UConn, and Marquette. Which one are you choosing for your Big East champion?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Marquette. I'm going to stick with Marquette. I like guard play. I like experience. I expect that Chase Ross, Sean Jones, their sophomores, will take a leap here in year two. I expect that David Joplin and Ben Gold will also take leaps in filling in for Omax Prosper. If you remember Olivier Maxence Prosper, he went to the first round of the NBA draft, gets picked by the Sacramento Kings. So because of that, Marquette's got to fill the hole at the power forward slot, but they've got their starting backcourt intact. They've got their starting center back. I'm rolling with the Golden Eagles, who went 29-6 last year.
All right. So I did some research and I saw that you were lucky enough to cover the 2016 Villanova national championship team. Can you talk about that experience a little bit?
Yeah, it's a great question. That was unbelievable. That's the first Final Four that I have ever covered. And to say that it was memorable would be an understatement. To be able to go to the Final Four in Houston, I'll never forget walking into NRG Stadium, the home of the Texans, and just FaceTiming my parents and saying, this is amazing. You know, this is what you sign up for when you hope to do this, is you get these types of opportunities to cover these types of events. And I just looked around at the stadium and I thought, wow, I am one lucky guy. I'm lucky because I get to live out this dream. And little did I know that 4 nights later, Villanova would beat North Carolina after Marcus Page's incredible shot, hanging in the air to hit a 3 to tie the game. Chris Jenkins drills a 3 as a trailer with the pass from Ryan Arcidiacono. And I'm on the floor of NRG Stadium talking with Jay Wright and the Villanova legend Rolly Massimino and Val Ackerman and Ed Pinkney and Villanova players left and right. And Ben, I'm covering the national title team. That is one of the greatest shots, if not the best shot in the history of the NCAA tournament, because it was for the national championship. And it's a moment I will never forget. It's a moment that makes you somehow love what you do even more. And I always tell myself, you never know what you're going to see walking into a game. I certainly didn't know I was going to see that night. And it makes you appreciate what we do. We get to talk about sports. It's so much fun. That was so much fun. And it made me say, I can never, because I was still a student at Seton Hall, made me say, I can never do anything different than this for my occupation. There would be nothing that would create this much joy. That's how I saw it, and that's what it turned out to be.
Legendary shot there. I was too young to remember it, but I've watched it on replays countless amounts of times. And how much of a difference do you think that Jay Wright retiring has made for this Villanova team in the past few seasons?
Well, there's no question that it's made a difference. And honestly, for Jay Wright, you know, it was quite a turn, because he had the best program in college basketball, or as good as any program in college basketball. He went out on top, but it was so strange to see him go. And you just knew, Ben, that Villanova, like, you can't totally duplicate what Jay Wright had been doing. There's only one Jay Wright. There was only one Michael Jordan. There's only been one LeBron James. There's only been one Phil Jackson. I know Knick fans would like to say some things about Phil Jackson, but the coach, you know, there's only been one Nick Saban. There's only been one. Like, the greats are the greats. Jay Wright's a great coach. He's a great all-time coach. Villanova was in no way going to be able to, I think, easily transition on from Jay Wright, especially when he announces that he's retiring after the season ends. There wasn't a plan in place ahead of time, anyways. It's not a known one. So how do I think they responded in year one? They struggled. They struggled this past year. They didn't make the NCAA tournament for the first time in over a decade. I think it had been since 2012. But I do think, Ben, that their name carries weight in college basketball now. If you say Villanova, people know, wow, Villanova's had great years, great teams, terrific players, Josh Hart, Jalen Brunson, Omari Spellman, Chris Jenkins, Ryan Arcidiacono, now Justin Moore, Colin Gillespie. So I do think that will lead them to being a really good program. They brought in a great class, a great transfer class over the offseason. They got Hakeem Hart from Maryland, Tyler Burton from Richmond, TJ Bamba from Washington State, and Lance Ware from Kentucky. So honestly, they had a really nice offseason. I expect that they'll be able to get back on track this upcoming year, but there's no question the Jay Wright departure, it certainly did harm them in the immediate term because he was such a great player.
Yeah, you mentioned Brunson and Hart, and you didn't mention Dante DiVincenzo, but he's now a Knick.
That's right.
So what do you think that the Knicks are missing this year that'll make them that championship contender?
Well, that's a great question. I think that the Knicks need a little bit more on the wing in terms of shot making, in terms of just being able to drill, catch and shoot looks that are created by the likes of Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart. And so what you need guys who are going to understand the system and understand when they're supposed to take and make shots. Dante DiVincenzo understands that. I mean, and here's the thing, Ben. By getting DiVincenzo, Hart, and Brunson, I say Villanova, it's the Knicks. The Knicks will have great culture. The Knicks will have great culture. They're going to have guys who are connected, guys who understand leadership, guys who understand what it takes to win. I think the Knicks are good in the paint. I mean, I really like Mitchell Robinson. I thought that he played really well in the playoffs. I liked what they got in the rebounding department. I thought that Jalen Brunson rose as a superstar this past year. Jalen Brunson is a superstar. I don't even think he's done getting better either. I think that's what's scary about him. I think he's got a potential to be one of the elite players in the NBA. They just need to keep on saying, okay, we know how to defend. Okay, we know how to battle. Tom Thibodeau's teams are going to battle. Can they generate enough offense consistently? Avoid the droughts. Avoid the 6-minute drought where they just can't score. And to do that, you got to find complementary shot making. And if they can get enough of that, I think that the New York Knicks can be a force to be reckoned with. I've had my opinions. I'm not in on Julius Randle. All right. I think things have run their course. I think Julius Randle, I think things have run their course. They got to get strategic. Just because you've got some really good players doesn't mean that those players always mesh exactly with winning. And that's where I think the Knicks have to evaluate some of their personnel to say, all right, is there going to be a more valuable time for us with Julius Randle than now to work out a deal, to trade him, to get some value back for him? We'll see.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Randle fan. This year he had the ankle injury in the playoffs, so I kind of give him a little bit of credit there. But in the Hawks series, he was flat out terrible. And I do agree with you that Robinson and Hartenstein were amazing rebounders this past season. And I do think that they need more shooting. And they had that guy, and they still have him in Evan Fournier. The problem is that their head coach, Tom Thibodeau, doesn't think that he defends well enough. But they do have the shot making. it's right there for them.
They do. I agree with you.
So shifting gears and getting to the MLB where there's drama surrounding Japan's two-way superstar Shohei Ohtani and where he'll be playing after the trade deadline. So what city do you think Ohtani will be in on August 2nd?
Oh my goodness. I mean, this is such a great question. And I think that my gut says that he ends up in one of three places. I'm going to say still Los Angeles with the Dodgers. I still could see the Dodgers pulling something off. I think the Yankees are a natural team, although I don't really like this Yankees team. I don't like them. I don't think that they're all that good. I think that that's exemplified, by where you look at them right now. They're in last place in the American League East. Now they're 50-45. It's not like that's a horrible record, but they're in last place. I also could see Texas. There seem to be, some rumblings there. I mean, the Rangers, I'll tell you what, the Rangers are an interesting team because, Ben, they can hit the what out of the ball. They're 56-39. All right. They're having a great year. And, I kind of think that when you look at the way that the last month has gone for them, offensively, they've been really, really good. They're the best offense in baseball right now, in my opinion. Maybe Atlanta would be the one that's a little bit better. But Texas has a great farm system. Look out for Tampa Bay. I mean, maybe the Rays with their assets, maybe they do make some crazy move and go for them. And, never count out the Reds because, Cincinnati, they've got tons of guys in the minor leagues. Cincinnati could be willing to make a move. Could you imagine Shohei Ohtani and Elly De La Cruz on the same baseball team? It would be mind-blowing.
That would be insane. Elly De La Cruz, one of the best young talents in baseball today. Texas is an interesting place where I haven't thought about him going. They have that strong middle infield in Corey Seager and Marcus Semien. They have the pitching with DeGrom, who's down with Tommy John surgery, or Tommy John right now, and Nick Pivetta. Their outfield has played well. Adolis Garcia.
Yes.
Their first baseman, Josh Jung, he's played well. I think that's an interesting spot where I could see him going there. And then the Rays, they always they have their thing is that they have these prospects in the farm system. They bring them up, and then once they're done on their rookie contracts, they let them walk. But they have these highly regarded prospects that they could trade to other teams. So they have assets for days.
Well, they do. And I love that you brought up Texas. I think that the Rangers, when you look at what Marcus Semien, Corey Seager have been able to do, as you said, to have them at the top of your lineup, you don't forget about a guy who's performed well this year in Nathaniel Lowe. He's got no PS over 800 and has hit the ball well. And then you brought up Adolis Garcia. Like, this is a ball club that they can hit. Now you put Ohtani, and that becomes a murderer's row of a lineup.
That would be a very good team. And they're another surprise team this year, like the Orioles. A bunch of young talents who mesh well together, and they complement each other's games. So the GMs are in an interesting spot here, where if they want to go out and trade for Ohtani, right now they have to part ways with some of their prospects. But if they just wait the 2 months, they can go out and spend a boatload of money and sign him in free agency. So where do you stand on giving up your prospects?
Yeah, you got to be really strategic. I mean, you have to be a team. And that's why I brought up Texas. And I think Baltimore's another one. The Orioles are one to consider. If you're getting Ohtani, you're going for a championship. I hate to break it to Yankee fans. You're not winning a championship this year. I mean, you might make it to October. And I know the adage is, well, you make it to October, anything could happen. I respect that. Playoff baseball, it happens. The random can happen, but we know this year. I mean, if baseball's showing us one thing right now, it's that there have been surprises, Ben, but there is a little bit of boredom in some of the division races and some of the teams at the top. Atlanta's run away with the NL East. They're up by 10 games. I mean, they're up. The Braves have put that away. You know, the other division races are closer, but Texas and Houston have a clear advantage in the West. Okay, um, you know, the Red Sox and Yankees really aren't in the picture right now in their respective divisions. The Reds development's interesting, but outside of the Brewers and the Reds, that division is pretty much. I mean, it's not totally over, but it's looking over. The Cubs have not had a good year. You know, the NL West is interesting. The Dodgers, Giants, and Diamondbacks are right there, but the Dodgers are in first place, and I think the safe money's on the Dodgers. The American League Central is a horrible division this year. It's been awful, all-time bad. So I guess it's interesting to look at the standings and see who's going to win that godforsaken division. But the fact is, like, I guess the question I'm asking right now in baseball is anybody going to beat the Rays and the Braves in the playoffs? Is anybody going to beat those teams? Maybe. Maybe we'll see it. Maybe Texas or Baltimore will pull it off. But at least in the National League, Atlanta looks so far and away better than everybody else that I guess I'm sitting here saying, like, I love baseball. But will we see a little bit of parity in October? Will we see October get shaken up at all? That's what I'll be curious to watch.
Yeah, I mean, the Rays had an incredibly hot start, but they've kind of slowed down. I feel like there's room for either the Rangers or the Orioles to beat them in October. But yeah, and your Guardians were in first place. The Mets open up a series with their division rivals, the White Sox tonight. Um, yeah, but the Guardians were in first place. They've struggled a little bit. Um, what do you think is going on with them?
Cleveland? Well, you know, or the Mets.
Cleveland.
Cleveland, I mean, let's look at Cleveland. So Cleveland, Shane Bieber's hurt right now. Tristan McKenzie's hurt. So that's brutal. You know, they've just been banged up. I mean, that's been the biggest thing with the Guardians is they have had some significant misfortune on the pitching front. Now that's how you start. That's how you start. But that's not a fair excuse. Every team has injuries. Okay? The fact is, when you look at the Guardians, you know, they're in a place where they have not been able to get Cal Quantrill, by the way, is hurt as well on the 15-day IL. So you got Cal Quantrill, Shane Bieber out, and Tristan McKenzie's been out for the majority of the year. Offensively, this team has not been very good. They've been extremely inconsistent. Guys that just haven't gotten better this year. Or I kind of thought, Ben, that last year the Guardians were ahead of schedule. And so by being ahead of schedule, now things have caught up with them this year where reality set in. Look, Ahmed Rosario ain't cutting it. He's not cutting it. He's hitting 263. He's just not. He's only got 3 home runs. It just hasn't been enough. You know, Andreas Jimenez is down to 243. I know Mets fans are looking at some of these figures saying, oh, did we win the trade? Did we lose the trade? Josh Bell has not had a good year. He was their big pickup, their big bat pickup in the offseason. And Miles Straw, their outfielder, is hitting 239. He has not been good. So the fact is, this is a ball club, Ben, that has really struggled to find enough offense, find enough consistency, and that's why they are where they are right now. I mean, I could turn to the Mets for you. The fact is they have just been a dumpster fire.
That it's been terrible. The highest payroll in MLB history, and they're 20 games out of first place. 2 weeks before the trade deadline. And that Lindor trade is interesting because Lindor he was not very good in his first 2 years as a Met, but this year he started to turn it around. I thought he should have been an All-Star this year, Orlando Arcia beat him out for the starting spot, which I don't know how these leagues let the fans determine so much with the All-Star games. I think it's terrible. But yeah, Rosario and Jimenez, they haven't been as they haven't been playing as well as they have in years prior. And Lindor, he's still not what we thought he was going to be, but he's been better. And the Mets are another team that they overachieved last year. They won 101 games. And
Yep.
this year, reality is kind of setting in. Although the Mets did go out and they should be one of the best teams in the league. They signed Justin Verlander. The year before, they signed Scherzer, Marte. This year, they got Tommy Pham. They brought up Alvarez and Beatty. Like these guys are the Mets, they're just underperforming. And
Yeah.
that's another story for another day. I really appreciate you coming on today. Do you have any last advice for me as I continue on my podcasting journey?
Well, Ben, my piece of advice is stay as enthusiastic as you are now. Never lose that enthusiasm. You're crushing the game. You are crushing the game. I know we didn't get to your Giants, but this Saquon Barkley thing, they give you a brief thought on that. That's part of the market for running backs, right? I mean, running backs are a dying breed in terms of giving them the big contract because you want to invest everything into your quarterbacks. And the Giants they're in on Daniel Jones. I mean, and they should be. He won a playoff game last year. People ripping Daniel Jones apart. I think he and Brian Daboll work well together. I'm excited to see what he does this year. I think the Saquon Barkley stuff will get worked out. But, my advice to you is keep on going. Keep moving forward. Keep that energy up. And I'll tell you what, if you bring that energy to everything you do, no matter where you go to college, no matter what you do in your life, that's going to produce greatness. And that's what you're doing right now. You're just getting started, man. So I'm excited for you. You're crushing the podcast game. There's not a lot of people in your age group doing this great of a podcast, asking this strong of questions to me. So I appreciate you having me on. And I can't wait you got me thinking about what's next between the fall with basketball and football. I know in New York, this baseball season has been one to forget, but we got a lot to be excited about. That's for sure.
100%. Thank you again for coming on. You're welcome back on the show whenever you want. Just let me know. I'm your host, Ben Valiant, and that's going to do it for the 40th episode of the Sports Pod.